Please don't. I'm a terrible offering. You really don't want to do this. I taste terrible.
Not today.
What?
It's got boobs.
There we go, gentlemen. There we go. That's today's intro. It is the Mattriarchy. We are live with Dan Sakharov and the Metal right now. We're hoping some other dads show up so you can talk about making comics as a dad. That's today's theme. But before we get into that, I see that Sporkman was in the chat right at the 7 o'clock hour. And I wanted to take a minute on that because holy crow, those guys, they wrapped up their campaign today for Spearhead. I don't know if you guys saw that or not, but that wrapped up, and let me go on ahead, check that out there. Look at this. It's fully funded. They made an extra $400 over their asking price. So we are going to get ready for some great Spearhead action. I am super stoked. So congratulations to Chuck and to oh my goodness, I forgot his writing partner's name, Jedi Raylan, but I can't remember his real name.
It is a beautiful thing to see this funded.
Ever. It is, though. It is. I'm so glad for it. No. And
it's also the closest we've been to being exactly on time in a while.
I suppose that's true. So, well, I'm going to hang on. I got to remove that from the studio so I can keep track of stuff. So in case people show up, I can spot them coming. So that's the ticket. Yeah, we have been habitually behind, but that's as I was mentioning in the stream, but in the backstage before, it's my fault because I am bad at school, and that's in fact, right after the show, I've got to jump off and figure out how to say something insightful about 2 books in the Paradise Lost by Milton. So I don't know if I'm prepared for that.
That's going to be tough. I mean, is there anything insightful you could say that Milton didn't already?
That's part of the concern we have. And also my professor and I are not interpreting the passages in the same way. And so it's sort of like, I have to decide if I'm going to try to make an argument and try to prove it or just kind of talk about some other related issues. And my term papers on Paradise Lost as well, and the concepts of heroism that are in it. So like I also could spend some time hammering out my notes, but we'll see if I pull that off. Nanji has joined us. Thank you.
How you doing?
How's it going?
Also, pretty good.
Also in the chat. I can, yes.
Excellent.
I assume that's you. I've never heard you before.
Yeah, no,
it's never actually spoken before. In fact, it was just a few weeks ago. I was talking up your comic, and now it's my turn.
Yep.
On the stream here, and I wasn't sure if you were a boy or a girl. I didn't even know. I had no idea. You really capture those girl voices really well, and I'm not familiar with any of your other work.
Oh, that was AI, actually.
I was like,
I did that.
I honestly don't know who this Nanji is, but I like their stuff. And Twitless is like, he's a dude. Well, and I saw you talking about, dad chores the next week, and I'm like, okay, we're going to talk about that.
Yeah. Yeah, that was AI, actually, that did the voices for that little thing I did.
Oh, I didn't even hear that.
No.
Yeah. I'm just talking about, like, the actual, like, the speaking voice.
Oh, God.
Right? How you write them. The girls actually converse on the page the way girls converse. So that's pretty cool. I liked it.
I'm not
also, anyway, I don't want to just spend that much time on that, but you might notice I don't quite sound normal today, guys, and it's because my body is being ravaged by medieval devils, or which you youngins call viruses, and so but that's not as much fun to talk about. So I'm gonna
the spirits.
They're the spirits that are afflicting my flesh, and we're gonna have to deal with that. Pardon me.
Well, you got to get rid of the miasma. That'll do it.
I'm sorry, I could not hear you over the top of my coffee.
Hey.
Anyway, that's also why my camera is not
So
on.
you have to get rid of all the miasma. That'll do it. Yeah.
There you go. Well, I am wearing the same hoodie that I've been wearing for the last 3 days, so that maybe that's a factor after all. But it's warm and I'm sick. I mean, I'm afflicted.
Yeah, you're afflicted. Yeah.
Yep. I'm not going to be able to keep this up, guys.
Yeah. Speaking of kids give you all manner of wonderful miasma.
Yeah. It's true. It's true because they are out in the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing. Like my wife is a stay-at-home mom, and so I go out into the world and see people, and then bring these things back. And when I was younger, I would not get sick, and she would, and I felt super guilty about it. And then the kids would get sick, and I'm like, oh, that feels so bad. But then I hit 30, and every year my immune system gets weaker and weaker. So now I'm the one getting it too. So we have solidarity in our affliction.
I've managed to avoid it, fortunately, despite having a very similar situation. And both of the kids routinely rotate miasma.
I actually believe that I picked up this particular strain from my oldest, who is away at college, and came back from school for Thanksgiving, because the emergence time happens to line up just about perfect. So there we go. I'm going to blame Van.
I'm just coming off of something myself too.
Well, guys, as much as I could just fill time talking about how sick I am and make you all feel really sad for me, the jokes are played out. So I think it's time to get on talking about dad stuff, and then we'll hopefully Nick and Brian can make it. So our other 2 dads on the panel were to have been Brian Brinley, who is the artist behind The Adventures of Omega Girl. Volume 2 is now available for sale digitally, so you should go check that out. I should probably have a link prepared, but I don't. But that's Twitless's book. So there you go. That's exciting. And the other one was Nick Mueller, who I just saw earlier today, but he was saying that his kids are running away, and so I don't really know his excuse, but it was something. It was something with bedtime. That's all I know. So. But once again, as the old hand in the dad game, my kids are both grown. I don't have to put them to bed. Although I do occasionally scold him when he's still up at 2, because that's irresponsible. However, I am up at 2 to scold him. So call that for what it is.
My oldest would routinely stay up till 4 a.m. playing Mordhau, or whatever it was. And I'd hear him through the wall saying, yeet, as he was throwing spears. And I said, look, you can play late all you like, but, you got to keep it down.
Just stop with the Zoomerisms, okay?
Yeah, stop with the Zoomerisms. Yes, exactly. Please.
That's the embarrassing bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I love the word yeet. Yeet's just a fun word, because it's the exact opposite of yoink. You know what you're doing when you hear it.
That's fair.
Precisely.
It's one of those neologisms that actually makes sense. So I started getting into a fight years ago, when this is almost a dad conversation, so we're going to run with that. But we years ago, when the Oxford Standard Dictionary added sippy cup, no, it wasn't sippy cup. That it was selfie, when they added selfie to the dictionary. I'm like, this is stupid.
To this day, I cannot say that word. I say self-portrait.
Oh, okay, fair enough. But so the thing is so my co-writer for Forces, Chris Lawton, and I were talking about it, and talking about language evolution, and I was saying selfie is not a word, and he said, how do you figure? I said, any word has to have a rational, like, reason to evoke, like, within the word you have to explain what it means, right? So you have to have a rational story that the word tells for it to be a word. Words are made of parts of words. They make sense. You can't just have a word with no etymology, and selfie has no meaning. And Chris says, I'm not so sure about that. I said, okay, fine. Let me steel man your point. Okay. So what is self? Self is yourself, right? Okay. And IE is a diminutive. It means a smaller or intimate form of yourself. God damn it. It makes sense.
Hoist with your own petard. Yeah.
I was.
Yeah. I was about to.
Hello.
I was about to make that
Sporkman
point too.
appears to have returned, and I appreciate that. And the tricky trapster, who I've not seen before around these parts that I recognize. Hello. So,
hello, Tricky.
Dave says, I lost a pair of dice and then found them. Where were they? I'm curious about this. It's unrelated to the topic, but I'm curious. Oh, yes. We were extolling the virtues of your fulfilled campaign and how exciting it is to see the next chapter in the Sporkverse roll out. Because, man, I am Team Spork. So,
yeah, and Spork says, look at that sexy campaign. I think from left to right, that's Dylan's artwork. I do not know who did the artwork for the middle one, but I know that. Okay, yeah, and Illustrator Monk did the far right one. And I don't think that man is capable of drawing something that is unappealing.
I know he is remarkable as long as he actually picks up the pen.
Yes.
It's good. I know he was mentioning that sometimes, man, the muse just isn't there and with everything. And I appreciate that. But, man, every time that guy touches it. Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go. That's the artist behind, or the artist team behind the main cover.
Beautiful.
So let us launch then into the story. First of all, I will tell my dad's story. So my children are both grown, and they were born before I started making comics, but not before I tried. So I spent several years trying to pitch my way into the big two, only to collect a series of rejection letters. And it was after my children were born that my buddy Chris came to me and said, let's just self-publish. And he had a whole speech, and I fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. And I've been making comics like some sort of crazed person ever since then. Some of them are pretty, the ones that I've gotten to work with other people. And then there's the ones that Chris and I drew, which are evocative, but not good looking. And so my children, though, from 2005 on, all of their conscious life, I have been making comics. And so that's one of the things that has just been part of, and they both contributed to the webcomics. They have ideas that have tucked their ways in there. They're one of the only people that I know has read most of the book. Or that's not really a book. It's 700 pages of whatever it is I do. But they're the only people that I know that have read all of it. And so that's it's hard to even separate my idea of what it is to be dad versus what it is to be a comic creator, because that was just a part of it. So that's my the short version of my dad's story on that. So Dan, since you were the first one here,
yes,
have the floor.
Absolutely. Well, my comic creating days go back to when I was perhaps 3 or 4 years old, and I was watching Battlestar Galactica, the original 1970s series and reruns. And I started making my own Battlestar Galactica comics, and I think my grandmother kept them, and she insists that there was one panel that transitioned from one period of time, and the caption on the next panel read 3 million years later. So that was quite a jump in time. And I would meticulously draw armies of Cylons that would fill up an entire page, very, very basic, obviously. And I think I filled half a page of Cylons only to have one caption which read "Stand at attention." So that was the extent of my creativity back then. But ever since then, I had been drawing primarily short comic strips for school and with my friends. And in middle school, we even created our own self-publishing company that the name of which was an acronym based on the first letters of all of our names that formed a nonsense word that's too embarrassing to reproduce here. But we basically took the Marvel Comics role-playing game, which was a D10 system at the time, and we just rolled characters in that using that system, and from there we created our own superhero universe. And my superhero, his name was Tiger Claw. He had leather tough skin. He could phase. He could lift 10 tons, and he had claws. So he basically was a very much an amalgamation of many different characters that had powers that didn't really go well together or make sense. But
Well, when you're 14,
when I was 14, he was badass. Yeah. But anyway, so that was that. And I didn't really do much with it. In high school, I wanted to be more of a fine artist, although I always had in the back of my head I either wanted to be a Disney animator or I wanted to be like Stan Lee. So that was my childhood dream, was one of those two things.
You're very different things, Dan.
Two very different things. Yes, I wanted to be like Stan Lee because he was cool. You know, he had all the clever catchphrases, and as far as I knew back then, he invented every single superhero I liked. I mean, I didn't really look too much further into it. The resources weren't readily available to look up the truth, so to speak. But yeah, I loved all the Ditko Spider-Man. I loved all the old X-Men, all that stuff. The stuff that you could find in the Essential collections now.
Oh, yeah. And the Essentials were widely popular and available back then.
I love those. And I think the first comic I bought with my own money was the Baron run of the Flash, where Wally West took up the mantle, and they nerfed him to make it more easy to write stories around him. Like, all of a sudden he can only run the speed of sound, and he burns a lot of calories, so he has to eat. Okay, cool. So that was neat.
Well, yeah, and what they did with that was so. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah. It was a great series. I think I collected up to like issue 50, and then I stopped collecting it. But then there was the Roger Stern runs of the Avengers and all that stuff. I absolutely loved the Under Siege storyline. To this day, I still remember how tense that was. So basically, I put everything on hold to enter the IT field for a little while, and my brother approached me around the turn of the millennium and said, "Hey, let's do a webcomic." I'm like, "What the hell's that?" And he said, "Oh, well, you just draw a comic and you just publish it on a website." And at the time, that was an unusual thing to do. There were only a few of them. So we ended up doing sort of like a comic strip that ran for about 5 years, put it down, and went back into our regular lives, got married, had kids. And I spent like maybe 4 or 5 years trying to get this or that novel finished. I managed to finish one of them. And around 2016, I decided to try webcomics again. And at this time, my middle child was just beginning to be able to draw. And so she was kind of getting interested into what I was doing. And the webcomic Molly Beans ran for about 3 years, and she loved that character. She loved drawing that character. And she started to make little fan art. And then we did then I met up with Matt and Brett, and we formed what became known as the Mythiverse. And she absolutely latched on to the Changeling comic, which Brett created. And she did an entire fan comic based on that property. I think it was 8 or 9 pages long, an original story that she wrote. And she just showed a natural inclination towards the same kind of storytelling that I did. Like, she sits down and writes, and she sits down and draws just like I do. And I think it all happened through osmosis because I didn't really directly encourage it, but she just saw me doing it and said, "Hey, that's cool. Let me try that." And she's kind of found her own little voice too. She's currently making a comic called Geek Dragon, which is exactly what it sounds like.
Amazing.
Because she's fallen in love with all things to do with dragons. I think it was the Wings of Fire series and How to Train Your Dragon that did that for her. The first time she saw How to Train Your Dragon Part 2, she was 3 years old, and she spent the entire afternoon play acting as Toothless. Like, she got down on all fours, made sounds. She just wouldn't stop pretending she was Toothless. So she's definitely showing the same creative inclinations that I have, although she's doing it in her own way. So, and she's been begging me about when's the next issue of Triple Crown coming out, when's the next Changeling coming out, and I have to keep telling her we're working on it. But yeah. Well, that's pretty much it. I mean, my youngest is just now beginning to draw, and he's showing a lot of the same proclivities. So I might get a second edition of that before too much time passes.
Yeah. Well, that sounds fun.
Yes.
Honestly.
Yes, it is fun. It's like watching the sunrise over and over again.
Yeah,
It's like,
it really is. And
yeah.
I think one of the coolest things is just like making webcomics, especially. It's lonely work unless you get one of those runaway hits that makes everybody want to talk about it.
Yeah.
You end up with not knowing who's reading it, not knowing how invested people are, not knowing if it's something they're scrolling through their phones, half paying attention at 3 a.m, or if you really have people reading it. So when your kids take an interest, that's something fancy. So,
It is.
So, Twitless has arrived. Ho ho ho!
Hey, Twitless.
Hey, Don.
It's Twitmas.
Ho ho ho! Merry Christmas.
It's not December yet. We have a few more hours. You can't be Santa yet.
I almost no, he can't because he was diehard
Team
Thanksgiving for a full month.
Yeah, this
So he changed all of his online icons on midnight of Halloween and was Thanksgiving posting for the whole month. So he gets grace.
okay.
So I've already hung up my family wreath in the front thing. So
Oh yeah, we have to do that this weekend.
Yeah, the wreath we have is bigger than like our door can hold, and we just like after 5 years of like pretending that it actually works, we just decided that no, it's not. we can't use it anymore. It doesn't work.
yeah,
So
I have a little story about our wreath, but the short version is that my wife and I made a custom wreath together one year. So that's one. It's a little sun faded. It probably needs touched up, but that's the ticket. So from the chat, that welcome Neil, welcome Delicate. Those are new joiners. So good to have you guys here tonight. So Naji, tell us a little bit about your history of dad and comics.
All right. So for comics, yeah, like as a kid, I made comics. I don't know since when, starting 5, I guess is a good number. And when I was, I think, maybe in high school is when I started. I was really into like the old Sprite comics, if you remember them. Like
Oh yes.
Bob and George was the one I used to read a bunch.
I think 8-Bit Theater was my first one.
Yeah,
I
8-Bit Theater,
love
but
8-Bit
it was so
Theater.
it was so wordy that like I had to be in like the zone to read it. So I kind of dropped off after a while. But anyway, I was really into Sprite comics for a bit. So I did Sprite comics for a few years and then dropped off because I started college, or I was in college. And then I didn't do much with comics for probably a decade after that. And then recently I bought a tablet because I thought my kids go through so much paper just drawing their stick figures that I thought if I got a tablet.
The economy argument.
Yeah, we could do that. And then I realized that they don't know how to work a computer screen, like the Windows. And so I ended up using it. But then it kind of, scratched the itch that I used to have. And so I'm like, I'm not that great at art, but I could probably do a 4-panel thing. And that's what got me started in webcomics. And also I thought if I wanted to get it, I wanted to make more friends in the indie space because I kind of discovered, I guess, your boy Zach first, like 4 years ago, and then just branched off from there. And it seemed like there was a lively conversation on Twitter. I completely dodged the big falling out, like schisms that happened in like 2018 somehow for Comicsgate. But anyway, I just wanted to make friends with people, talk about comics on social media. And I figured if I don't have a comic, it's kind of hard to do that. And so I decided to make my own webcomic. And because I didn't know if anyone would read it, I decided to make the primary characters girls. So at least my daughters can enjoy it when they get a little bit older. Because right now my oldest is like 6.
That's amazing.
Nice.
And I've been going going from there, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I love your comic. It is it's so great. So, and my sons are sons, they're boys. They of course knew little girls growing up. So I really did appreciate I do appreciate what you're doing with that one. And just how like guileless and sincere both the characters are, while at the same time they've each got their rough edges and they've got their weak points. But it's a fun series. It's a fun series.
Yeah, it's fun for me because like a lot of their rough points just came from like me thinking of good punchlines for them, and then like the punchlines just kind of warped or changed their personality to fit the punchlines. And so far it's worked out pretty well. I'm not sure if it will keep doing that, but
so cool.
Anyway, yep.
So now how long have you been back on the comic horse?
So for just this year, I actually really start. I haven't really been drawing until the beginning of last year, like really regularly, and it kind of shows in the webcomic for a little bit. But yeah, like for producing comics, I've been only this year.
Are you two issues in? Because you release a whole issue at a time, right? I'm trying to remember.
Oh, so for Global Comics, yeah, I was going to do a issue, but on like Webtoons, I do it in 5-page bursts every month.
Okay,
so that's pretty much the pace I can actually sustain.
Cool. Yeah, and of course you're a one-person shop. That always makes a big difference.
Oh, yes, yeah, that's the thing too. It's just that like eventually I want to outsource some of the art at least.
How do you feel? How difficult is it to balance making comics and being dad?
Yeah, it's difficult, and you definitely get, I don't know, for me anyway, it's hard. It's a learning process to kind of balance it, because I need, making a comic takes a good chunk of time, and I work 8 hours, and so the time after my day job, I can work, but I also want to be part of my kids' life, so I have to spend time with them, and it's just managing it. So mostly what I do is once the kids are asleep, I work for an hour or two at night, and that so far has been working okay.
If I may interject, I think you're already doing a lot in that direction, making them a part of your life, because you're making the comic largely for them to read later, aren't you?
Yes. And yeah, I guess it's kind of interesting because right now my kids are young. Like I said, my oldest is 6, and so I show them a few things, but their attention, they're like, okay, what's the next thing? Do you have the next page, right? I'm like, no, it's going to take me like a week. What are you talking about? And so they're like, if I show them too much, then they'll be like, every time they have a spare moment, it's like, hey, where's the next page? Where's the next page?
You see, they are involved.
Yeah.
That's the best audience ever.
Like if that were my only audience, that would make me more than satisfied.
Yeah. When my kids were old enough, my Forces of Good and Evil, it's a little mature. So it's a kind of have a teen and up. So they didn't tuck into reading it until they were a little older. But it was fun to have them involved with it, and especially because my oldest boy has a real mind for stories, and so he's collabed with a few projects in universe, like from a narrative perspective. And my younger boy has been drawing. He's had a pencil in his hand since he was 3. And so he's done some art. In fact, in not the current story, but the one before that, Panic at the Ren Fair, he did inks and corrections on that whole story. The artist who was working it, Rolf, is a friend of ours here in town, but he was going through some medical stuff, and so he wasn't quite able to finish up stuff. And Tolly came in, and I really love how that story turned out. So some of the coloring isn't right, but that's my fault. So as I look to collect that, I'm going to redo some of the coloring stuff. So, but that's my fault.
Yeah, on that topic,
But anyway,
Sportcast,
yeah,
when I was going to release a collection of Molly beans, and I would love to, but it's not formatted for the page.
Yeah.
So it would be a lot of work.
Yeah, that's one thing that I decided a couple of years ago to take the first year's worth of Forces stories. Okay, so you guys all, maybe in Naja you probably don't, but the other guys have heard me grouse about this long enough. In fact, I think Twitless probably has a response rant prepared somewhere that he may ever tell me. But I've been doing Forces since 2006, and the whole premise of the story is that it is two lifelong friends who end up being sent. The friends are a goody two shoes nerd and kind of a bully, kind of a tough guy. And the tough guy gets sent to supervillain high school, and the nerd gets sent to villain school, right? And so we have all this high school drama and comedy and action all mixed in together. And so we released that January 3rd, 2006 was the first page hit the internet there. And for the next 7 years, anytime we tried to tell somebody about that story, was that somebody was like, "Oh, so just like Sky High?" I was like, no, it is not just like Sky High. Well, a few years roll around and we start trying to tell people about the story, and oh, that's just like My Hero Academia.
Exactly.
No, it is not like My Hero Academia. Well, I started reading My Hero Academia, and I see where they get that from.
Though you should say that My Hero Academia read Forces of Good and Evil, and that's why.
I think they may have.
Yeah, I think so.
Like Midnight, the bondage hero or whatever her thing is shockingly similar to our villain Donna Matrix. So that was interesting. And so that was interesting. But anyway, I'm grasping for straws. I guarantee her, because she has not read my webcomic. There's just threads in the air. Anyhow,
it's like Mr. Sparkle.
So,
Mr. Sparkle.
moving along. So I a couple years ago, I said, you know what? I'm looking at sales trends. I'm looking at what's actually selling. I'm looking at people that might be interested in my story. And I said, I think maybe, we're going to cons. We're having limited interest getting people to dig on our old school style. But I've got this, kind of grungy, a little punk rock, kind of a webcomic about teens in high school. It's lo-fi. It's do-it-yourself. I think I need to lean into that and try to get it to, the whole thing. So, to a different market than we're trying to reach with it. And if I keep getting asked about my hero, well, then maybe that's the size. Maybe today's audience believes that a comic looks this big, right? Instead of being a floppy, maybe the bound volume would do something. So, I'm taking the first about 200 pages of Forces with some supplemental material that we're putting in there, and I'm reformatting that into a manga-sized Forces of Good and Evil. And we'll see if anyone has any interest in that once I get it put together. So,
Well, hopefully the cover helps.
yes. Oh my goodness. Yeah. I don't want to bring it up right now. Maybe I will after a bit. But Metal, I commissioned a cover from him, and hot damn, that looks so good. Yeah, it's great. It's great. So, hey, this is true. Neo does point out something that I have mentioned before. Neither Sky High or MHA do a villain school. So I did do more with the genre, and it fits into the larger story of the universe. Because that's the other thing, is that Chris and I weren't content.
What's another comic that also has a hero and villain school? I wonder.
Yeah. Yours is good. I'm not trying to throw shade.
No. I'm just.
In fact, guys, let's be real. You out there in internet land, go check out superschool.com. It's super fun.
Yeah, truth be told, I was trying to find a way to work in a super school reference.
Yeah. The Twitless does it. Twitless and Cartoonicus do a great job with that strip, and it's way more irreverent and less serious, even for the jokes. We have I try to balance equal amounts of stupid humor and like serious drama, and I don't know, maybe that's why nobody reads it. but the Twitless has got it great there. So, but anyway, yeah, I've back to the dad conversation. That is something that I've loved being able to share with my boys, and even if you look at idealcomics.net right now, the last several main page updates are actually a webcomic that my youngest has done. It's a funny animal superhero strip called Grab It, which I think is flipping hilarious. So he was just showing me a new
hopping hilarious.
Oh, it is. It is hopping hilarious.
Oh,
there you go. Yeah, I think it's great. And well, actually, he just today yesterday he was showing me he's actually working on more strips. So I didn't know if he was going to keep going at it or not. But he got the fire under him. So anyhow, I'm definitely I just love being able to share those stuff with my kids. And I think that really, like I said before, that's the best audience. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
It's definitely the most fulfilling audience.
Yeah. I don't know whether the fire in me to tell these stories will continue, and we'll end up with if I or when the day comes that I shove off this mortal coil, whether
that's a bit morbid.
Yeah, what's gonna happen? I'm just saying. I'm not sure if that'll be a thing where Talia will want to pick up after, or not. But
put it in your will. You only get your inheritance if you continue making my comic.
That's funny. You think he's gonna have an inheritance? I love my kid, but I ain't got that kind of money.
He's gonna at least inherit your comic book collection. There's gonna be, I know you have that.
Yeah, no, that's true. They'll have stuff. So I am hoping that they will break the curse of being stuff rich and money poor. But yeah, I would but that's my take on it. So long term, we talked about the creative process. Dan, what do you do to balance creating and parenthood?
Well, like Nanji said, I try to do it after they're either otherwise engaged or asleep. That's when I do most of my writing. Most of my creative energy tends to sprout in the wee hours anyway. I typically get all my best ideas at very inconvenient moments when I'm driving or when I'm asleep and I need to wake up and write them down. So usually I try to save the actual work, the actual boring work that takes time when I have time that they have no need of me during. So that's typically it. Like I'll get up, get them dressed, take them off to school, and I work from home. If I get my day job work done before I have to pick them up, then I try to squeeze in a little bit there. Feed them, get them clothed and bathed, whatever, in their pajamas, get them to bed, read them a story. And then if I have any energy left at all, then I devote it what time I have there towards to writing, drawing, and conceptualizing. The one good thing that I have going for me is that I'm working with artists very frequently, and writing doesn't typically take me as long as it would take them to draw. So that lends itself well to working in narrow windows. And I've become quite efficient at it.
So yeah, I think that's a big factor in figuring that out. And I think that I feel kind of on the other side of it, because even though I'm predominantly the writer, because of how everybody's life has changed, I'm also the editor, and I do the publishing stuff and the layouts and the colors and the lettering.
Yeah,
so
welcome to webcomics.
Yeah, exactly. And for our print stuff are that are few and far between too. So that's fun. But
yeah, for people used to working on teams creatively, like when I was doing Molly Beans, they would say, "Hey, who does your coloring and lettering?" It's like that's me. That's all me. I can't afford to pay someone to do this stuff.
Yeah.
So
Wally
yeah,
Beans
so
is
Doug says, I
delightful.
hope to have all my comic storylines tied up so my kids don't feel obligated to finish them. I want them to do their own things. That's a really good sentiment. I want to laden my family with as much baggage as possible. So
Oh yeah. To be more specific, my hope, I would it would be a kick to see, like the Grab It story, which that's probably not got super long legs, but for him to carry on with that as much as he felt like, and if you wanted to, who knows where things will go out, but yeah, so we'll see.
One thing I have noticed, though, that as a dad, I tend to write characters that have children or plan to have children or
Mhm.
families, so that kind of builds in its own little longevity.
Yeah,
Like you
that's
can always
one
continue
thing.
the story with the kids or grandchildren or whatever.
Yeah, that's one thing that I've definitely seen in my own work, and not only because I kind of started. Well, so part of our motivation with starting Ideal back in the day was that nobody would talk to us,
Mhm.
but the other one is that we, both Chris and I, were fans of the style of storytelling that was just not being done in 04, 05, where this picture of this broad sweep of history and the idea of people holding true to continuity and um, all that kind of stuff, and the idea that these big universal stories have a fun, but they also have it's a big story, but it's also a personal story of these individuals that are going through this. And even though DC was going through all of their big events at that time, they were just kind of casting aside, characters with these histories. They spent all this time building up Dr. Fate to be the eternal son of Hawkman and Hawkgirl, and like how cool is this idea of that you have this family, and then the next event they come around and they just like wipe them out of existence. It's just like,
Yeah.
like, what are you doing? They have they've got this great Wally and I forget his wife's name for a second, but have this great story with them as parents, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh well, we don't want to deal with that, so they're off in the Speed Force raising their children because of this made up reason, and so we're gonna age up Bart. it's like, man, you guys spent 20 years getting Wally to grow up, and it was a great trip to watch.
Yes.
And then you're like, oh, I don't know what to do with him now, so let's break our toys. Well,
so yeah, I know I'm going to be in the minority on this panel when I mention this. I kind of I see both sides of that issue. So like there's the other one that's relevant that I think to bring up there is Chris Claremont, right?
Yeah.
And what he was doing specifically with characters like Cyclops right before X Factor starts, and then he wrote those characters essentially like he was their dad. Like he wrote them like they were his own kids, and he treated them like his own children. And there's this really great documentary about it. And the thing that I saw that was interesting was because they interviewed Chris, and he's an older guy, and he's had the X-Men for 17 years, almost 2 decades, treating them like his own family, aging the characters, building that kind of a legacy. And then the new generation comes in, the new blood comes in, and there's this. They jump to Jim Lee and Rob Liefeld, and the two of them. It's not just like these two people. It's kind of the fact that you have this new generation rising up, and they're like, the toys are not. They're your toys that you've had for 20 years, old man. They're now ours, and we want to do something very different, and that's when Chris basically got kind of pushed out. And that's when some of those things started getting obviously they started getting undone earlier than that. But I think there was this very marked shift, and there's a generational aspect to it. It's not just the corporate overlords being evil, greedy corporate overlords. That's part of it. But there's also, like I said, there's this new generational thing that says, okay, well, you've told your generational story. We want to basically start over and tell ours. We don't want to do it with new characters. We want to do it with these characters that we like. And it's kind of hard for me to. I see both sides of that. Like I'm
Right.
like, yeah, I completely understand where it's like, no, you've undone this character who I've
Mhm.
grown up with, who is aging like I am. You're resetting him to zero, and I completely understand why people resent that. But I also kind of understand the new blood that says, no, I want Teenage Spider-Man again.
Right.
So it's
which
it's a
is
pickle.
one of those things
Oh,
that
crap.
and I agree that's 100%. And I think one of the things that really allows that to happen is this idea of the eternal now in comics. And I think that's the beauty of the form in some ways. I think like Archie's a great example where there's continuity for the people that read Archie while they're reading Archie. And then when they quit reading Archie, there's so little shift. There's that illusion of change enough that you have that evergreen story in a lot of ways.
They did try to advance the timeline with the M2 line. Didn't
Yeah.
but not terribly successfully, except I would argue in the case of Spider Girl, which was a great book.
Yes. Spider Girl is such an interesting case because like people like I have met young people today who were born after they stopped publishing the M2 line that have gone back and found Mayday Parker and love that character so much that they're mad about One More Day retroactively.
Seriously.
I count myself as one of those people.
Yeah, I'm just like,
Just real quick, my middle child came in, wants to say hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah,
Hello.
she's the artist and the author.
Hey,
just
I told them
talking
about Geek Dragon.
did you like it?
I
Sounds
love
fun.
Geek
Yeah.
Dragon. I love Geek Dragon. I just gave them a general overview of it.
Yeah. Did they like the idea?
Did you guys like the idea of Geek Dragon?
Yeah, it sounds fun.
Yeah.
Is it? Where is it going to be
I
available?
like the
to
name.
read?
It's a very good name.
Very cool. All right, thank you. She's off to bed now.
Okay.
Sorry about that, but she came in and she was like, "Is it okay to come in?" And I'm like, "Yeah, just come over here, say hi."
That's fun.
It's a dad cast, or as my wife's called it, a podcast. PAD.
PA''D. I love it.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, you
so-
actually you brought up Bad Guy High. I just remembered that I followed that comic from like start to finish back in the day, and I was looking for it while we were talking. I can't find it anymore.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's still up or not. I went through. I did not find it when it was new. I ran into it somewhere along the road and checked out the whole thing, and it's good stuff. It's very interesting.
Yeah,
There's
this
some
also.
really-
I guess this is a little off topic, but you're talking about how you're compiling your books or your comics into books. It's like, for me, I'm realizing now, because I started looking for old webcomics I read like 10, 12 years ago. I can't find them at all. I
Yep.
really wish I bought just a physical copy of the ones I liked, at least, so I can
And-
just be able to read them again.
Some of them you can find pieces of them from on the Internet Archive, and so I have gone through a bunch of books where I can find them and just
Save the local
stolen
copy.
them
I might
from
do
those
that.
abandoned sites. But yeah, there you go. But yeah, Abigail has joined us. Hello. She actually compiled our intro video, so thank you for that. Doug Curtis, Doug, I want to do this theme again. You ought to come on then. Doug says, I'm amazed DC let the first Robin grow up to be Nightwing. I agree. That actually created a lot of problems in how time could flow with their universe. But one of the things that we chose to do with Ideal was we have a fixed timeline, and every one of our stories has a stamp in that timeline. And if you were to check out Zing Comics, available on Gumroad for pretty cheap, then you can see that every one of those stories comes with a specific year date line on all of those things.
I'm so mad at you for and also for naming it Zing, because every once in a while my brain has to have this moment when I'm talking about Robert Crumb, and I have this. Okay, Zing
Zap.
is Reese's comic and Crumb's is Zap, and I'm just terrified one day I'm going to get them swapped.
There are better and worse things to be mistaken with than Crumb. So he was a degenerate, but also sort of foundational.
Right? No, it's great for you. But if I'm giving a lecture and I start saying
Yeah,
Zing comics,
that's
I'm looking an
true.
idiot.
No. I'm sorry. Yeah, only 7 people have bought that other comic. Never mind. Which Zing is our print anthology. Which
First off, that's not true. Like a bunch more people bought Zing recently.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. We actually
I made them.
we actually are in the couple of hundred if you look at lifetime sales on that over the last 15 years. Jim Tuner, a foundational degenerate. Yes,
Definitely.
That's actually that's
the real
perfect
secret
description.
to getting your friend success.
I'm sorry, what?
Oh,
So the real secret to getting your friend success is to become a
Forcing your
teacher and then force all the students to buy all their books as reading material.
I've started that process.
I mean, I feel like that's a lot of classes do that exact strategy.
So a lot of authors
why.
get their books sold as reading material in schools.
Yes,
I have not. Yeah, Metal and we're talking about this. I have not made any of my students buy my work. I have made them buy my friend's work.
So, but yes, yeah. Doug says Wayback Machine can find pieces, and I've used that quite a bit.
So the real pro move is making your family buy your own work. That's the real life hack right there. Speaking of children.
Now, one of the interesting things about the Wayback Machine that I want to go ahead and point out, I have actually used the Wayback Machine to grab screen caps of my own website that we lost access to through the years, so I can pull out blog posts and stuff that I can't find on my computer as I'm rebuilding our archives. So that's a whole different thing you can do with Wayback Machine is plagiarize yourself. But anyway, but yeah, man, I lost track of what I was talking about entirely.
I'm sorry, I derailed.
No,
the whole
no,
thing.
you're fine. You're fine. It's the devils. It's the spirits. That's
Yeah, the Vespers.
yeah. My flesh is suffering from the affliction. As a callback to the beginning of the show for those of you guys who were late arrivers. So, but man, I had a thought and I just cannot get back to it right now. Hey, Twitless, I see your comic is available now.
Yes. Adventures of Omega Girl issue 2. I had to take out the stick and take the take the print on demand service to the woodshed a little bit, but which was a little frustrating because I sent a slightly frustrated email and within I mean it was like less than a day. It was almost like they just had to flip a switch, and I was like, oh come on, it's taken that long. Like.
I wonder if it just didn't get buried underneath the other to-dos.
I think it might have. I think it was because it was during COVID-ish times. I think that threw everybody off, and then there was hurricane. There was a lot of things that hit the print on demand service I was using that I'm very happy with the print quality on, and it's just crazy.
I know I need to make sure that I follow up with your thing and maybe do a review on issue 2.
Oh yeah, super happy to.
All of my free time that I've got.
I know, right? All the tons of free time you have.
2 weeks till like my life goes completely pear-shaped and then mellows out until the first of the year, sort of, kind of. Except I got a bunch of end of the year reports for work to do. Anyway, but let's not imagine that for the second. And just say I may have some time free up on my weekends coming up here after the 17th. So we'll see. Mrs. H says she would love some Omega Girl.
I just posted a link in chat. Check it out.
Yeah. Very cool.
And I already have again, we'll see how long it gets. Number 3. Number 3 is already finished. I just need to get it listed and then taken care of there. But it's coming. And I've got colored artwork for issue 4 should be coming in. So definitely by next year, there'll be 5 or 6 issues worth of stuff coming out.
That is a nice looking book.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the preview right here.
I was kind of bummed. My artist is a dad as well, and he had to be a dad for his kid tonight and was not able to make it. But
That happens. That happens. So.
Yeah, but he's a great guy, and I will get him eventually on this show because he's a real good dude. Brian Brindley, and yeah.
If Nick obviously can't make it, which is fine, and if Brian could not make it, and Doug said he'd be on to talk dad stuff, so maybe we'll have to do this again. I know there's more dads. In fact, I'm not against opening it up to moms. Stage. So if I'm sorry, it's the viewers. Sorry, everybody.
The viewers.
But yeah. So there you have that. It'd be fun to take a look at those other perspectives as well. Also, while I'm talking about projects, she was here earlier. Delicake's comic, Between Worlds, is in fact an amazing dad story. So it would be great. I mean, it's great. You should check it out. Since we're talking about dad stuff. So. Oh, here we got a question about volume 2. Is it quick stories like 1, or does it have a longer continued story?
Yeah. So issue 2 and 1 are the ones where I hit you with a lot of stories at once. They both have 12 pagers in there though, so it's not just short ones. By issue 3, I started to transition into longer pieces, and so issue 3 ends up just having 2 12-page stories, kind of like classic kind of DC. Where you get your story A, story B. And by issue 4, because I do want my readers to know that there's not just going to be short pieces. Issue 4 is a full issue story. So kind of, I have a little bit of variance in there. Like I said, issue 1 and 2 have, I think 3 4-page stories, and then 1 12-page. So there's definitely at least one longer piece in each issue.
Mrs. H corrects me. Really good point. That her sci-fi series, which is available on Kickstarter right now, actually, it's nearly funded. You should go get some comic books. Is also is a foster dad of the orphan Lucky Star. So that's a good little tie into today's show. So yeah, there we have it. I'm going to go ahead and share that here because I want to. I've got it on a different tab. Where'd it go? Aha. Sorry. Worst show ever. I know.
So, okay. So I'm going to pull this in another direction. You guys have been doing your normal, like, oh, being a parent is great. And it is,
which I,
but we need to have at least a moment, okay, where we get real for a second and we say, what is the worst part about being a comic creator who is a dad? What is the worst part? We've talked about the positives. The positives are the best, and we'll flip back to the positive because it's good to end on that positive note. But we need to have that moment where it's like, you know what, changing those diapers while I'm coloring is not always easy. So I want to hear from the whole panel. What's the worst part?
If you're a big fan of wrecking your computer, then you could do that.
I want to hear some war stories. Come on, hit me.
Sudden unexpected trips to urgent care because the kid fell off of a chair and now has a gigantic lump on the side of her head. that kind of puts a damper on your plans to get anything done.
So for me, I would say that there are kind of 2 aspects. One, creating is lonely work, right? So in the first year we were doing Ideal Comics, and I was putting together a lot of scripts, and we were working on a lot of stuff. I'm trying to kind of and building our timeline out and building out our ancillary characters and looking at all that kind of stuff. It was like every night where I was up late after everybody, and the kids were very small, so they were in bed at 8, 9 o'clock, and Amy was out by 11, and then I was up till like 3 in the morning, every night for months. And it was just by myself, right? And I coined a name around it. It's the second day, where you have your day, and then you come home, and everybody else's day ends, and your day just keeps going. And that's lonely. That's lonely. So when it came around to the kids being interested in that and wanting to participate in that kind of stuff, a decade later, that was a weight that lifted. for me. The other thing that was difficult is, especially for webcomics and for that kind of stuff, you got your schedule, and everybody talks about it, and the communities talk about how important it is to keep on schedule and keep on schedule.
Right.
Life happens. So if you're not getting your page ready, you feel guilty. If you're not dealing with the day-to-day dad stuff, you're feeling guilty.
Yeah.
So you kind of gotta pick your battles. Like, what am I going to feel bad about today? And I'm going to be honest. There's times I made the wrong choice, and my wife was there to remind me that I was making the wrong decision.
Yeah, that's definitely a very fair assessment.
Yeah, I got that.
So that's mine. Sorry, I stepped all over you, Nanji.
No. Actually, I agree. Like, it's you have to keep your whatever schedule you set for yourself. I tried to, because I had a little bit of experience doing webcomics before, and that time I didn't have a buffer at all. So, I produced something and just posted it like the second I was finished. And I think I did a 5 days a week comic, and that was awful.
That's cool. That's cool.
I mean, it was a sprite comic, so you didn't have not much effort. It was all copy and paste, but still, I didn't want to do that again. So I made sure to have 6 months of like backlog just in case anything were to go wrong. And now it's like
6
4 or 3
months. Jeez Louise, that's that's ambitious.
Yeah, well, now it's 3 or 4 months, so it actually it was, but yeah, like, and yeah,
That's like the manga industry right there. 6 months backlog.
yeah, and but yeah, like the biggest complaint for me is that like I'll be in my second day, and it's just like I'm behind. I want to get something done, and then one of the kids will just start like screaming in the middle of the night that they do sometimes. And you just have to drop everything and run upstairs as quickly as you can, or else you'll wake up the entire house. And usually it's usually it's the easy thing, and sometimes you have to stay with them for a whole hour till they're satisfied that you love them, and then they'll go back to sleep. But that's it. That's it for me. My kids are pretty good. Not much to complain about.
Yeah, the night terrors are an awkward. They're a weird stage the little kids go through.
It's just like, stop screaming. It's nothing to scream about. It
is though, and that's the worst of it with night terrors. Actually, we named one of our characters Night Terrors because we were going through that with one of our boys when we were creating our universe. But it's because they can't express in words the fear that woke them up. So you wake up with nothing surrounding you but fear, and you're in the dark.
Like I think it's just like, I don't even think they have. I mean, I think it's almost like an animal response, where like just the body is just turned on. They're not even like conscious.
Sometimes.
Yeah. And
so but for it's like. It's rough. It's rough to go through, and little kids are when they're 2-3 years old, and they're learning to think these complex things, but they can't say them.
Oh yeah,
and that's as a dad, that's the hardest, because you're just like, okay, I know you have a reason for this whole thing, but I cannot help you, so you just got to calm down.
Yeah, it's like deep breaths, calm down. Do you need a hug? Like, yeah, we'll figure this out together once you're. Yeah.
Well, I know with both of our kids, once they could speak in complete sentences, like that was a whole different world. Then they could explain what they were scared of, or what they were angry about, or what they needed. Whew, what a relief communication is.
Oh yes.
So anyway,
I think it hit home to me once, like how much time I was spending working either at my day job or on my creative work, when my youngest one decided he wanted to play act as dad. And I said, okay, you're dad and I'm you. So I walk up to him and say, do you want to play? He said, no, I have to work. It's like, oh, okay. Message received. Thank you.
Yeah. On that thought, like that, I feel like that happened to me just like a week, a month or two ago, where it's just like, where I just was working like an entire week straight. And I was just like, have my kids talked to me at all this week?
Yeah.
And I think they said something similar, like, all you do is work.
and he was really sly about it too. Like, I later picked up a couple of his little monster trucks. He has a big gravedigger and a tiny gravedigger. So I said, okay, this is the daddy gravedigger, and this is the you gravedigger. And he said, I'll be the daddy gravedigger. And then so I say, okay, what do you want to do, daddy? And he says, I have to work. And he turns around and he makes the tires do a typing motion. It's like, geez, you are so manipulative. But I understand.
Now, my youngest, who is still with us right now, he's going to school here in town. He'll be after me to work. He's like, shouldn't you be working?
Well, yeah, definitely.
Like,
at that age.
Look, I'm just finishing the next volume of my hero. Okay, it's a good story. Yeah, you see, we come full circle. But
Yeah.
oh man. Okay, guys. I know that we've only been streaming like a little more than an hour, but I'm feeling it real bad. And I'm not saying anybody else has got to leave, but I think I do. So,
I really thank you for having me on. It was a great
guys,
discussion.
this has been an absolute kick. I'm really glad. Angie, it's nice to meet you voice to voice.
Yeah, nice to meet you too. Thanks for the invite.
It's been really cool, and I love your comic. And Dan, I'm just going to remind you that someday I'm going to steal Molly Beans for a page.
Absolutely, yeah, she would love it.
Yeah, I've got a whole scheme, but I'm nowhere near putting that together yet. I'm hoping for 2020, end of 2023, beginning of 2024. We'll see how that shakes out.
I ended the comic strip by giving her more or less a happily ever after. But there were some things that were unresolved. But she's literally free to do anything. She's just living her good life. So if you want to use her.
Very cool. Very cool. Okay, ladies and gents, like I said, I am going to bow out. I don't know if you guys feel like sticking around or not.
Yeah, I'm going to bow out too.
Okay. Wait a second. I just remembered that nobody can end the stream but me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
you're
was
the
just
only
thinking
one that has
that.
that
Like once you
power.
go, I think we're all set.
Yeah, I
to
wish
this.
I had that power, but I
The
don't.
metal there, he's got the second chair position where he can manipulate the screen, add people and everything else, but he can't start or stop things.
That's the only thing I can't do.
So I guess this is a show, folks.
All right.
We're not having a show for the next 2 weeks because of school. And then we're going to come back on break and do some stuff. I haven't laid it all out yet. I'm hoping for some Saturday shows, get some people that can't normally make it on Wednesdays. I'm going to be doing some live reviews of some stuff.
Like The Adventures of Omega Girl issue 2.
I don't think I'm going to do that one live. Honestly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think I'm going to do that one recorded. But I do plan on doing that during break. I'm hoping to do some game streams. We were talking about that with Metal and Twitless. They had some fun stuff going there. I think we're going to try to stick into the break. We'll see how it all shakes out. But for right now, I need to rest and then finish my homework. So,
all right, feel better, man.
We'll talk to you guys.
Appreciate the conversation. Take care.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
And Dan, I have not forgotten the deep dive into your audio novel.
Oh, nice. Yes.
I haven't forgotten it. I just haven't set it up with you because I suck.
You don't suck, man. Take your time. Take care of what you need to take care of.
Well, Reese is juggling everything and also trying to, or not trying, but doing his own studies. So that takes a lot out of you as well. So
God, yeah.
It's not that he sucks; it's that life sucks.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
I did that
my life
just a little while ago. Work, school, and everything else. It's the opposite of trivial.
But there is a light at the end of that tunnel. So
I graduate in the spring.
There you go.
Anyway, that's the story, ladies and gents. Actually, there is one thing I wanted to do before we called it a complete show. Since everyone is leaving now, I'll go and throw it on here. Ladies and gentlemen, until next time, keep reading comics, be they in print or on the internet, because comics make the world go round. They don't really, but it's fun to think about.
Buy back slaves and punch heretics, and I'm all out of slaves.
We say hello to my little hand.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
I love
Merry
it.
Christmas.
Very
Good
good.
day.
And thank you, Abigail, for the amazing video. Laters.
All right.
Oh, and buy Omega Girl.